Would someone please explain to me the supposed appeal of having grandchildren? People ask me, "Are you a grandfather yet?" as if it's some great thing. I'm sure it has its charms, and I imagine some dull-witted people want to see their genes passed along just for the sheer novelty of the idea. But overall, I don't get it. Hey, it's been on my mind for some time, but I've never said it publicly, so here goes. Vo-do-de-o-do and a scotty-waddy-doo-dah-day. Thank you. Masturbation is not illegal, but if it were, people would probably take the law into their own hands. It used to be you got a tattoo because you wanted to be one of the few people who had a tattoo. Now you get a tattoo because you don't want to be one of the few people who don't have a tattoo. Just when I discovered the meaning of life, they changed it. People in Washington say it's not the initial offense that gets you in trouble, it's the cover-up. They say you should admit what you did, get the story out, and move on. What this overlooks is the fact that most of the time the cover-up works just fine, and nobody finds out a thing. I would imagine that's the rule rather than the exception. My advice? Take a chance. Lie. Here's some fun you can have in a hotel. Smoke a big fat joint and then watch a complex spy movie with a lot of characters and plot twists. Then, a few weeks later, at a different hotel, smoke another joint and watch the same movie. It's like seeing a whole new film. But the real fun is that about every 15 minutes something happens in the plot that you seem to know already. It's an odd feeling. By the way, this exercise can probably be repeated indefinitely with the same movie, as long as the grass holds out. This is just one more way of starting a sentence with the word this and ending it with the word that. Here's an odd piece of slang I ran across. A woman who fucks a priest is said to have taken a ride on the holy pole. I make fun of people who are religious because I think they're fundamentally weak. But I want you to know that on a personal level, when it comes to believing in God, I tried. I mean, I really, really tried. I tried to believe that there's a God who created us in his own image, loves us very much, and keeps a close eye on things. I tried to believe it. But I gotta tell you, the longer you live, and the more you look around, the more you realize something is fucked up. Something is wrong. War, disease, death, destruction, hunger, filth, poverty, torture, crime, corruption, and the ice-capades. Something is definitely wrong. If this is the best God can do, I am not impressed. Results like these do not belong on the resume of a supreme being. This is the kind of stuff you'd expect from an office temp with a bad attitude. In any well-managed universe, this guy would have been out on his all-powerful ass a long time ago. So if there is a God, if there is, I think reasonable people might agree he's at least incompetent, and maybe, just maybe, he doesn't give a shit, which I admire in a person, and which would explain a lot of his results. So rather than becoming just another mindless religious robot, blindly believing that everything is in the hands of some spooky, incompetent father figure who doesn't give a shit, I decided to look around for something else to worship, something I could really count on, and immediately I thought of the sun. It happened in an instant. Overnight, I became a sun worshiper. Well, not overnight. You can't see the sun in the dark. But first thing the next morning, I became a sun worshiper. For several reasons. First of all, I can see the sun, okay? Unlike some other gods I could mention, I can actually see the sun. I'm big on that. If I can see something, I don't know, it kind of helps the credibility. Every day I can see the sun as it gives me everything I need. Heat, light, food, flowers in the park, reflections on the lake, an occasional skin cancer, but hey, at least there are no crucifixions. And we sun worshippers don't go around killing other people simply because they don't agree with us. Sun worship is fairly simple. There's no mystery, no miracles, no pageantry, no one asks for money, there are no songs to learn, and we don't have a special building where we all gather once a week to compare clothing. And the best thing about the sun, it never tells me I'm unworthy. It doesn't tell me I'm a bad person who needs to be saved. Hasn't said an unkind word. Treats me fine. So I worship the sun. But I don't pray to the sun. You know why? Because I wouldn't presume on our friendship. It's not polite. I've often thought people treat God rather rudely. Trillions and trillions of prayers every day, asking and pleading and begging for favors. Do this, give me that, I need this, I want that. And most of this praying takes place on Sunday, his day off. It's not nice, and it's no way to treat a friend. But still people do pray, and they pray for many different things. And that's okay with me. I say pray for anything you want. Pray for anything. But what about the divine plan? Remember that, the divine plan? A long time ago, God came up with a divine plan. He gave it a lot of thought. He decided it was a good plan, and he put it into practice. And for billions and billions of years, the divine plan has been doing just fine. Now you come along and pray for something. Well, suppose the thing you're praying for isn't in God's divine plan. What do you want him to do? Change his plan? Just for you? Isn't that sort of arrogant? It's a divine plan. What good is being God if every rundown schmuck with a $2 prayer book can come along and fuck with your plan? And here's another problem you might encounter. Suppose your prayers aren't answered. What do you do then? What do you say? Well, it's God's will. Thy will be done. Fine. But if it's God's will, and he's going to do what he wants to anyway, why bother praying in the first place? Doesn't it seem like a big waste of time? Couldn't you just skip the praying part and go straight to his will? It's all very confusing to me. So to get around all this, I decided to worship the sun. But as I said, I don't pray to the sun. You know who I pray to? Joe Pesci. 2 reasons. First of all, I think he's a pretty good actor. To me, that counts. Second, he looks like a guy who can get things done. Joe doesn't fuck around. In fact, he came through on a couple of things that God was having trouble with. For years, I asked God to do something about my noisy neighbor's barking dog. Nothing happened. But Joe Pesci, he straightened that shit out with one visit. It's amazing what you can accomplish with a simple piece of athletic equipment. So I've been praying to Joe for a couple of years now, and I've noticed something. I've noticed that all the prayers I used to offer to God and all the prayers I now offer to Joe Pesci are being answered at about the same 50% rate. Half the time I get what I want, half the time I don't. Same as God, 50-50. Same as the 4-leaf clover, the horseshoe, the wishing well, and the rabbit's foot. Same as the mojo man or the voodoo lady who tells you your fortune by squeezing a goat's testicles. It's all the same, 50-50. So just pick a superstition you like, sit back, make a wish, and enjoy yourself. And for those of you who look to the Bible for its moral lessons and literary qualities, I have a couple of other stories I'd like to recommend. You might want to try The 3 Little Pigs. That's a good one. It has a nice happy ending. And there's always Little Red Riding Hood, although it does have that one X-rated part where the big bad wolf actually eats the grandmother, which I didn't care for. And finally, I've always drawn a great deal of moral comfort from Humpty Dumpty. The part I like best: all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. That's because there is no Humpty Dumpty, folks, and there is no God. None, not one, never was, no God. Sorry. You know, they say that just before you die, your life flashes before your eyes, especially if it's a sudden death. It's like a little personal movie of your own. But it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, mathematically, how would that work? Let's say you're swimming at the beach, and you get caught in the riptide, and it pulls you out to sea, and you panic and begin swallowing water. Since you're about to die, the flashback movie begins to roll. Well, it seems to me that if it's really a flashback of your entire life, you'd have to watch the whole thing. And that would include the ending, which means seeing yourself arrive at the beach, walk into the surf, start to drown, and have the movie start all over again. Therefore, you'd have to watch it a second time, which would include arriving at the beach, walking into the surf. You get what I mean? Thanks to the flashback, you can never die. The movie runs forever. I don't like euphemistic language, words that shade the truth. American English is packed with euphemism. because Americans have trouble dealing with reality, and in order to shield themselves from it, they use soft language, and somehow it gets worse with every generation. Here's an example. There's a condition in combat that occurs when a soldier is completely stressed out and is on the verge of nervous collapse. In World War I, it was called shell shock. Simple, honest, direct language. 2 syllables. Shell shock. It almost sounds like the guns themselves. That was more than 80 years ago. Then a generation passed, and in World War II the same combat condition was called battle fatigue. 4 syllables now. Takes a little longer to say. Doesn't seem to hurt as much. Fatigue is a nicer word than shock. Shell shock. Battle fatigue.